What's up YouTube, Capital G here. We're talking anti-meta monsters in this video and asking the question, do we as players deserve newer and better ones in the game of Yu-Gi-Oh? And the main reason I'm asking this is because I've kind of noticed Konami really hasn't made any type of attempt to give us any good anti-meta monsters within, I don't know, maybe the last 3 or 4 years, like when you really think about it. Let's just say that I said, okay, name some of the best anti-meta monsters in the games. Ones that could be splashed easily into pretty much any deck. Chances are you'd come to the conclusion of a lot of these cards, you know, Thunder King Ryo, Doom Cow, Fossil Dyna, King Tiger, Wanghu, Banisher of Radiance. But then when you really think about it, like a lot of these cards came out 6-7 years ago. We just don't realize that it's been that long because probably been playing the game that long. Now, don't get me wrong, Konami has given us a lot of floodgates recently, like Mistake and Mind Drain, etc., but they've also shown, well, at least Konami of America, that they've pretty much been bringing the sledgehammer down when it comes to floodgate cards. Vanities is at 1, Soul Drain, Defissure, Macrocosmos, so it's really not a viable option to rely on these cards anymore when building a deck. And I do understand that this isn't really, like, it's not in their best interest as far as a business standpoint goes, because the game is completely about archetypes. Like, you know, you want to sell new archetypes because they sell the sets, and if they released a whole bunch of good just splashable anti-meta cards, it may, you know, reduce the sales. But then I guess the counter argument could be that those cards would be chase cards and people would buy it for that. So just in general, I feel like the cards that they've kind of given us recently, like, I don't even know if they're considered great anti-meta cards. And I put the 2 Vanities cards there because I don't really consider these, just because, you know, I don't really think that it's ever been viable to just splash in tribute monsters into a normal deck, or when you're building a deck from the ground up. Like, I've always thought that the tribute summon mechanic is something that you kind of have to like incorporate into your deck unless there's just some extreme circumstances. So I don't really count Majesty's Fiend, and we won't count this because if I'm not mistaken, this came out in Cyberdark Impact, so you can't say, well, they gave us Vanity's Fiend. Cyberdark Impact came out in what, like 2006? This is like 9 years ago. But I think of 2 monsters recently, Denko and Lightning Rod Lord, and I kind of look at Denko and I'm just like, I don't think that this was even supposed to be anti-meta. This card is almost like damn near a cancer on the game. The only card that actually instantly came to mind when I just thought, what's a really good stun monster that's kind of come out in the last maybe year and a half? And obviously it was Traptrix Murmillo. This is a card that during like the hat format, I want to say that this was probably, it was at least a top 3 monster in the game. I think maybe between Nis, Archfiend, and Geargia Armor, you could have kind of decided between those, but probably this and Archfiend were like the best monsters in the game. But this is a card obviously that can be splashed into a deck. It doesn't serve the same purpose as some of the other stun monsters does, or some of the other stun monsters do, but for the most part, this is what I would consider a good anti-meta card. And the reason I want new anti-meta monsters is because I don't know if anybody has noticed, but a lot of these guys have just been power creeped. Fossil Dyna is still a really amazing card, and it's good for what it does, but in the past, Fossil Dyna used to be a card where generally if you had it face up on the field, as long as you could protect it from maybe 1 attack, you had a good edge against decks that like to special summon a lot. Like, you know, you'd be able to, okay, your opponent summons, you Mirror Force, you deprison their monster. Chances are the rest of their hand is just a whole bunch of summon cards. But in Yu-Gi-Oh! In 2015, like, that's not gonna happen. Like, it's not gonna happen consistently. You know, you think of a deck like maybe Necros or Tellarknight. You have, let's say, a Fossil Dyna on board. If I summon a Deneb, you have to use Mirror Force to protect your Fossil Dyna, and that's fine. But that Deneb can get me a Unu, which means you now have to have 2 Mirror Forces. Like, you have to stop 2 of my monsters instead of 1. When you have Necros, if I summon Manju, I can easily get Brio and then search a Dance Princess. And again, that's 2 cards that can easily out your Fossil Dyna. So it's like, we now have to spend more resources to protect the old cards. Cards like Doom Cow and Fossil Dyna and Banisher of the Radiance. It's not like these cards are getting better. So I feel like we either need more of these good anti-meta cards, or we just like need newer versions. Like, I actually have been thinking for a while, like, if they release Fossil Dyna, but it had 1700 attack, like, would you guys consider that broken? Because in the year 2015, I would consider that like adjusted to power creep. Now, one of the reasons why I don't think that you know, stun is hardly viable is because for some reason Konami has saw fit, at least in North America in the TCG, to limit Thunder King Ryo, arguably the best stun monster of all time. And if you look at the OCG, they have pretty much the same decks that we do, but it's not limited there. So, you know, maybe it's one of those things where Konami doesn't want stun decks to exist, but I know that players have always been fond of stun decks because it's decks that you build from the ground up. They're one of those, they're kind of like, you know, Had and Plant Synchro, where they're better than the sum of their parts. So let me know what you guys think. I think it's kind of interesting that, you know, Konami really hasn't been even trying to give us just good anti-meta monsters. I don't know if they're just trying to get completely away from floodgate type effects, but then they keep releasing like all of these random floodgates, you know. They're releasing Lose a Turn very soon, and again, we get Mistake and Mind Drain. So it's like, on one hand, they're constantly giving us floodgates, but on the other hand, we can't get, you know, good anti-meta monsters. So let me know what you guys think. Thank you for watching as always. Subscribing makes life happy.